All right, hey YouTube. This is a window of a 1987 Bayliner 3270 motor yacht. And this window was leaking. And I really didn't take the time to figure out why, because I've had so many other issues that I've had to address that took priority, that I waited to fix this. And my initial thought was the original gasket, which this is not original, this is what I added. The original gasket was cracked and leaking. When the window was closed, water was accumulating on this little edge, getting down and somehow making its way through the gasket and the two pieces of aluminum and dripping down. Now that may have been a problem. However, I removed that gasket with a utility knife, and I ran the utility knife right along the edge, because that gasket is a continuous piece with what holds the plexiglass into the aluminum frame. So you can't just remove it and put it back in. You'd have to remove the entire piece of glass. And I, of course, didn't want to do that. So I cut it right along that edge and tried to create somewhat of a bevel, you know, leaning, angled downward. I still have to correct that a little bit. And then I replaced, or I added this gasket that I found on Amazon and closed up the window. It's a little thick, so the window is it wants to open up on its own slightly, but when these screws are attached, this is a Bomar hatch, by the way. When these are threaded tight, it sits flat on there. And I tested it, and wouldn't you know, it was still leaking, and it was leaking pretty bad. So what I determined was that I'm gonna have to remove this entire window, which I didn't know how difficult it was gonna be. Fortunately, this one wasn't secured that well, probably the reason it was leaking, or I'll explain that in a minute. It was part of the reason it was leaking, of course. Remove this, all these screws here, remove this outside frame, pop the window out, and I found that, I'm gonna go over to a different window to explain this. When I took the window out, I discovered that there are holes. This frame is essentially kind of tubular. It's hollow inside. This frame here is hollow inside, and it also on the outside it's hollow as well. If you look closely, there's a little hole right here, and that hole is drilled into the inside of this frame here. But if you remove the window, you'll see that there's a hole on the inside, excuse me, the outside section as well. Now it's inside here, you can't see it, and it's not exposed on the outside. But they essentially are allowing, I don't know, maybe drainage. I'm not sure if it's part of the manufacturing process or what, but these holes were in those two holes in each corner of that top corner here. This one here, and then this one here, same one of the bathroom window, the head window. That hole was open on the outside, so when the seal broke on the outside of the boat between the gel coat and the aluminum frame, the water got in, went into that hole on the other hole, the one that's not exposed right now, got into that hole, traveled inside the frame, and these screws are threaded into that frame. They hold this piece to the outside frame, so it pinches together. These screws are threaded into that. and the water was coming into that chamber, and then just finding this screw hole, because that was the closest one at the bottom, and then just dripping down like this. And that's why this window has all of this, you know, mold and mildew stained area on the carpet. So when I removed it, I filled those holes with 4200. You can see I got 4200 in this hole, even though that one's not the problem hole. It's the other one. The outside one is the problem hole. So filled that up, ran a heavy bead around the entire outside of that window, pulled it into place, put this frame back on, put all these screws back on, tightened them down, then of course wiped up the excess, which is pretty easy on the outside. Unfortunately, nothing really squirted out too much on the inside here. You can see it started to come through there a little bit, but nothing serious, not really making much of a mess. So now I'm just letting this dry, and I am gonna start cutting the weather stripping, or this gasket on these other windows, or I already did that, so that's why it's removed right now. You can see the gasket that I threw away looks something like this. It's kind of cut into pieces, but that sits right here in this position, and the gasket starts to separate, obviously, from the UV and the weathering, and then it creates these little cracks. This one I probably created myself, but you can see how the crack begins, and if that is in the down position, well, the water just goes into that little channel and leaks down as well. So hopefully, I removed these, and I was going to try to pull these out of here, but these windows are actually very well secured in here, and I didn't want to take the time to do it because I don't think the issue I'm having with these windows is this hole out here, because there's no evidence on the outside here of it being black or darkened from water. The darkness kind of starts down here. So I'm going to put my weather stripping on there. I bought from Amazon. That's this piece here. It's got a couple ridges on it. You can see some 3M tape. Make sure this is really clean on the window itself, because I'll adhere it to the top section here, and then I'll be able to close it up like this, tighten these up, and hopefully that fixes my problem with leaking these windows. These windows weren't leaking nearly as bad. Obviously, you can see my little drip trays, temporary fix to collect the water, and that did just fine for the first 2 seasons or whatever. Now I'm starting to get more serious because I'm sick of these drip trays being all around here all the time. So hopefully this gasket fixes the leaks, and I can move on from this problem with my 1987 Bayliner 3270 motor yacht. Thanks for watching.